seership, what is cosmic intelligence. And we know that because there's discussions in the Etruscan, in the kind of Druid legends, there's reference to this culture. The Etruscans, as great wine lovers, they had an export business going. And they were exporting wine to France before France's wine trade really took off. And they were exporting a lot of wine to France from like 1000 BC. And a lot of it was coming into a port down near Montpellier in the southwest of France, which archaeologists have discovered. I've written all this up in my Encyclopedia of Druid Studies, right? And for hundreds of years, the Etruscan wine trade was coming into France through that port in the south of France. And then they're finding, traces of that in graves, because wine was a precious thing, it was a sacred thing, and took a long time to grow and to master vines, and the whole thing was a mystery. Just as the solar rays come into the to make the food we eat through this incredible narrative, so in the vines, it's the moisture of the soil that becomes the vine and the grape, and that's a mystery in its own right, which there's another Bible there. Well, all this was known by the Etruscans, so the Celts, the Druids, loved the Etruscans, and they had great discussions, I'm sure, which I've written up. And it's interesting that Tarches is similar to one of the Celtic gods, Mabon, who's also a young child with prophetic faculties, and also similar to Taliesin, who's the greatest bard or seer of ancient Welsh history, and who appears just like Tarches does. As a young child, he can talk immediately and prophesy and write brilliant poetry. So I'm sure there's an ancient link, but not enough people have been researching this on the links between the Etruscans and the Druids. One chap who did is a very great Stoic philosopher called Poseidonius, named after Poseidon, who visited Gaul, about 150 BC, and he went and interviewed and discussed with all the Druids of Gaul, because he was a polymath, a philosopher. He followed Plato and Aristotle and Stoicism. And he wrote this book about the Druids of Gaul, which has been lost to history again. Another tragedy of when Alexandria's library went up in flames. So if anyone's got the book by Poseidonius, please, on the Gaul Druids, let me know, because there might be reference in there to the links with the Etruscans. And what is their wisdom? They find Tarches on Etruscan bronze mirrors. He was an important deity, so he's often on the back of a bronze mirror. They find him on gemstones and on seal rings. An important deity. Now, why is he appearing now in the cards for today? I think there's a link, isn't there, between the solar fertility. Alors, en français, j'ai expliqué qui est Tarches. Il est un dieu étrusque, très intelligent. Il représente la fertilité du terre et la connaissance d'une prophète qui a la conception du temps beaucoup plus grand que le présent. Le prophète, il pense dans milliers des années, dans la Bible, mais aussi dans les traditions européennes, comme les Druides et les Étrusques. Les Étrusques étaient très proches à les Druides. Ils ont la même connaissance de l'histoire. Pour eux, le Christ était seulement une druide, une prophète, comme tous les autres. Très, très intelligent, alors, mais pas le seul fils de Dieu. Et c'est important que tout le monde comprenne les facultés de prophétie dans chacun. Et ça, c'est le but de l'éducation des Étrusques et aussi des Druides. Et pour moi, aussi pour les chrétiens, on veut comprendre comment ça marche. Qu'est-ce que c'est de comprendre les secrets du monde? Ça, c'est notre devoir. Si on ne comprend pas, on va détruire. Parce que maintenant, nous avons des guerres au Moyen-Orient entre les factions des prophètes différentes. Ça, c'est stupide. On a besoin de comprendre la grande prophétie du monde entier et réconcilier les factions qui se battent. Ça, c'est mon interprétation de Targes. Right, so yes, I'm saying that this is about reconciling these warring prophetic tribes, Muslims, Jews, Christians, all the rest of them, and all their different factions, Sunnis, Shias, Reform Jews, Progressive Jews, Catholic Christians, Protestant, Rosicrucian, From the perspective of Targes and the true living prophetic lineage of Druidry, they're all just shades of the one light, like different photons that have arrived at different times from the sun. We're not going to have a fight over, well, I got here first, I'm the best photon. No, I got here more recently, so I'm the best photon. No, we're going to say, thank you, welcome to the forest of wisdom. We're all photons here together in the one oak tree, to use that metaphor. And therefore we should respect and revere each other's prophetic lineages. If I was a Jew living in Israel, instead of fighting in the army and bombing Palestinians, I would have gone to Gaza and talked to their wise people and said, incredible that you're here. What's your wisdom? Where are your libraries? Where are the sages of Gaza? They have churches there. They have different Sufi groups. They have different types of Muslims. And they've been in Gaza since 1400 BC, when the Egyptian pharaoh set up a sort of centre there. And they were written about in the hieroglyphic codes of Egypt. All that history is now being lost because of bombardment. Not only are they killing the people, they're killing all the libraries, the archives, people's diaries. As a scholar, this is totally imbecilic. We should be honouring each other. And likewise, if I was a Palestinian and living in Palestine, I would have gone to Israel and met the wisest Israelis and said, nice of you to show up in our land, you could have done it a bit differently, but now you're here, should we get on and what's your story? Tell us how your ancestors lived in Eastern Europe. Tell us about the pogroms. Tell us about your Holocaust and why you're the only one of your family to have made it out alive. It's about storytelling, reconciling these stories. I believe that's the way forward, even now, even in this 11th hour. And that's what philosophers do. I'm in the lineage going back to Pythagoras, who was himself Phoenician, which is not far, that's up in Lebanon. Phoenician culture was Semitic, and it gave us the alphabet, actually. The Etruscans were taught by the Phoenicians, so thank you very much. And, yes, but this is why Pythagoras taught tolerance between all the outer religions. He travelled in Egypt, he spent time studying in Egypt, he studied in Babylon, learning at the school of Shamash, and Marduk and all the great Babylonian gods. And he also studied in Phoenicia, in the temples, and in Greece. And he ultimately, used mathematics to explain ultimate truth, because that's about proportion and beauty understood mathematically through divine intelligence, which is why I wrote this book on philosophical mathematics. So anyway, I believe in, please wake up, humanity, talk to your wise friends, talk to your wisdom teachers in Palestine and Israel, make them make peace, because the nationalist political leaders on either side are not going to. They just want more status, weapons and kudos, like Netanyahu. The man is an anti-philosopher. He's a disgrace to his father, who was an intellectual, who understood about these things. And he's just, like Marx said, the history is full of repetitions, and the second time round it's always a farce. Netanyahu is the farce of his father, because you don't achieve success through violence. It's the law of life. non-violence is always the best thing, but that has to be intelligent. What should have been happening during these 10 years is that peace steps should have been made between Hamas, and yes, instead of demonizing Hamas as the devil, no, they're just Muslims, and you can talk to Muslims. I have deep Islamic friends and colleagues and teachers and students, and Islam to me is a state of being about surrendering the ego to the absolute. I've said this before. It's not about wearing a beard or praying a certain way. It's a state of being where you've pacified your ego. You've declared non-violence to God. Like, how can I take on the sun, that's solar intelligence, which takes 100,000 years just to send me one photon? What does my little intelligence have to offer against a being like that? And that's just one sun. There are hundreds and thousands of billions of those things in this vast universe, created by a super divine intelligence. Now, in Islam, we call that Allah, which is like the super intelligence behind everything. And therefore, I'm going to surrender my ego, my sense of, I'm going to be the best, I'm the first, I'm the best. I'm going to surrender that and hand it over to the super intelligence and let fate decide what I do with my life as an offering of service in the cause of peace. Now that's, to me, that's the inner metaphysical meaning of what Islam is. And all the Sufis I've talked to, all the great Islamic scholars, they say, yes, Thomas, you got it, that's it. And Muhammad himself, bless him, knew this. That's what, if you read the Quran properly, that's what's in it. Every line I've explained in my commentary. So there's nothing there to be afraid of. It's another brilliant load of photons come down from the divine source, right? So this is what Netanyahu and his extremist lot don't understand. They think they've got to have a war with Islam. No, you can't have war on surrender. You've got to eventually find your own surrender. I'm not saying you have to become a Muslim. I'm saying you can become a kind of surrendered Jew that has given up ego. Because Muhammad believed also in the God of Israel and never wants war between his followers and theirs. So we have to construct an interfaith narrative that's big enough for all this. And that's, and that I think is going to be helped by my Tarot of the Gods. So there we are, Gods and Helios. Any questions or comments?
Not yet. It was great.
Oh, yeah, okay. Vous avez des questions? Vous avez compris l'anglais un peu?
70%.
Ok. Voilà.
I didn't know the Etrusc history, and I was wondering the link between Etrusc people and Greek. You spoke about Latin people, but you didn't mention the Greek.
Sure. No, that's also very important. The alphabet came to the Etruscans. Originally it's Phoenician. The Greeks pinched it from the Phoenicians, or were encouraged. And also, so there were strong links between the Greeks and the Etruscans. The Greeks settled in the south of Italy. So what we call Magna Graecia was Napoli, the new city in Greek, and the colonies of southern Italy. The Etruscans are further up in North Italy, in Tuscany, around Florence. But they knew of each other. And also the Etruscans accepted the worship of Hercules. He was one of their deities. They also had Apollo, who they call Fufflans, because they couldn't pronounce Apollo, so they called him Fufflans, which is sweet. But they loved Greek religion, because the Greeks were very profound too, and wise people. And so were the Etruscans, so they honoured and respected them. And of course the goddesses, they had their goddesses, which I don't go into in the Tarot of the Gods, but you can get goddess tarots, and nobody's done a proper scholarly in-depth goddess tarot. I'm waiting, somebody can do it. Because it took me like 2 years to research this one, and I'm doing other things now, but If nobody does it, I promise I'll do a tarot of the goddess sometime in the next 10 years. But yeah, so very close links as well, as there were also between the Druids, the Celts, and the Greeks. Because the Druid civilization was going down the Danube into what we now call Bulgaria. They called it Thrace. So, and Thrace is where Orpheus came from. Orpheus was the prophetic genius of Greek civilization. And Orpheus, again, was friends with the Druids. So you'd have had discussions going on in Thrace about prophecy, seership, finding ultimate truth, in that region, Bulgaria, what we now call Bulgaria. And they've even found, archaeologists have discovered, like a tomb of a priest king on a mountaintop in Bulgaria that's from the date of Orpheus, like 800, 900 BC. And so he was the genius to the Greeks' civilization. And Pythagoras was an Orphic. We've got these texts that have been found of. In fact, the first book in European civilization that's been discovered, a scroll, is of an Orphic poem interpreted mystically. And it's survived. I saw it in the museum in Thessalonica in northern Greece. If anyone ever gets to Greece, go to Thessalonica. Athens, yes, of course, it's amazing. But don't forget the other city in the north of Greece, Thessalonica. And it has, I think it's called the Davani Papyrus, and it's the oldest book in Europe. And it's an interpretation of the Orphic hymns. So these people were wise, and the wisdom people, they get on and honour each other, because wisdom itself means, the word wisdom in English is the inner seeing or inner knowing. So it's my inner seeing honours your inner seeing, or your inner seeing. It's like we have within us this capacity to see deeply, not just imagine things, but really see stuff. And that's what wisdom is, in my interpretation. And I think that's what the Orphics, the Etruscans, and the Celts all understood. Yes. Right. Okay, well, I think we'll stop there. I think that's enough. We've done our two gods. To do more would be to tempt fate, because there's a lot of depth in that, I think. I also think it's important, Takes is a child. One of the things that really upsets me about the war in Gaza is they're killing children. 4,000 children. 4,000 children have been killed with bombs. Like, these are innocents who've done nothing. And they're being slaughtered. I find this against all, not just law, international law, but it's against morality, it's against conscience. And these are like Takes, these children. Each one of those Palestinian children is a little baby Takes being blown up. Is that what we've come to as a world? Do we want to suppress the wisdom of the youth, the next generation, so we blow them up? Well, that is disgraceful. That means the planet itself is going to reach a crisis if we don't honour being, and we choose instead the path of destruction, then we're going to destroy this planet. Now, certain demonic forces probably, would be very happy at that. I'm not. I believe in life and love and children. I have 3 daughters. I love them. They're great. I've done my bit for the next generation. And I honour my parents who created me. And that's, honour thy mother and father is the first commandment of Judaism, one of the first commandments. Well, that doesn't mean just your own. It means everybody's. Honour your mother and father is honour everybody's mother and father. Because it's a big thing to bring children into the world and care for them and raise them. That's the essence of civilization. And that's what Takes also represents. Whereas to kill children is to dishonour the parents, because they're not only killing the children, they're killing the mother and fathers as well. This is to dishonour life and to dishonour the commandments, the very commandments that Jews are supposed to follow. They're breaking them. Thou shalt not kill is another commandment. again, who's been reading, has anyone been reading these commandments in Israel recently? I mean, does anyone in the Israeli Defense Force read them? I think there should be a sort of mass walkout. Yes, of course, terrible things were done to the Israelis, and I'm not saying, that one should just completely disarm and let Hamas terrorists run all over Israel and slaughter people. No. But defense is different to offense. And James Cleverly, when he was in Israel giving advice to the Prime Minister of Israel, was saying, like, yes, you have the right for self-defense. Yes, you can go after Hamas, but you have to be disciplined and professional and use minimum force to do it. The British Army would never in a million years do this kind of mass slaughtering. It's against all international law, and we're, on the whole, very careful about. I have an ancestor, grandfather, that fought in the British Army in India and South Africa, and I just know that, you weren't allowed to do that kind of stuff. I wish the Israeli army would have the same ethos. And likewise the Palestinian forces. So anyway, that I think is something else about the oppression of children that Tarches represents. Because each one of these children is a prophet, potentially, is a Tarches, and being cruelly deprived of life. So there's a lot to think about here, isn't there? Okay. Well, we'll finish there. Merci pour votre attention et pour la classe de philosophie. Et on espère que la prochaine semaine, il serait mieux dans le monde. On espère.